It was just a couple of weeks ago that I had the pleasure of meeting and sitting with for a few minutes a legend in the world of PGA Tour officiating and having wrapped up a 31-year run in that capacity. I cannot imagine all of the stories that Joe Terry has at his disposal. I'm hoping they end up in a book someday, but for the next few minutes, he's all ours. And Joe, I'm very grateful that you have the time to join us. And it was good to meet you there a few weeks ago at the Yancey Ford event, the Golf Week Senior Nation event. How's life in Florida besides abnormally cool this time of year?
Well, it is abnormally cold right now. Today is absolutely beautiful. It's 67, 60, probably 65 to 67 degrees, pure blue skies, and no wind this afternoon.
Better than the
And
rain that you had the other day.
yeah, so we were down in the teens, and it just brings Central Florida to a standstill, as you might imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I am so fascinated by your commitment to the game and all of the places and things and people and events that you've been a part of. Can you kind of run us back to how that part of your life got started? Why and where did you decide I'm going to give this PGA Tour rules official thing a try?
But I was thinking about why I got into rules and why I got into it to the extent that I did. And I had a lot of help along the way but my real introduction into the rules of golf on a high scale was when I got out of the service, and that was during Vietnam, and I got home. I wanted to get my game back in shape because I was drafted out of college and I wanted to get ready to play. So I worked on it a little bit and I went to play in the state open championship in Alabama. And I played pretty well. And I was in the final group on the final round. And I had a one stroke lead standing on the 16th tee. And of course, we were playing in groups of threes. And that 16th hole was a very, very hard par three. That day, I can remember vividly. It was playing 203 yards. It was over a deep ravine to a green that set on a cliff. Really a hard hole and disastrous if you missed the green. And I hit one of the greatest shots and hit it about 3 inches from the hole. And one of the guys I was playing with said, "What a great shot. What did you hit?" And I said, "Oh, I hit a 3 iron and I nutted it." And the other guy in the group says, "That's two on you and that's two on you." And I kind of in a different verbiage said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "That's the advice rule." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You can't give advice and you can't take advice from anybody but your caddy." And so that was a two-stroke penalty
Wow.
for both me for giving advice and him for asking for advice.
Mm.
Uh, and I did not win the tournament. And I didn't finish second. I was distraught. But one of the members at my club in Gulf Shores, Alabama, was Jack Tuthill. I don't know if you remember that name, Jack Tuthill, but he was the uh, head of rules and competitions for the PGA Tour and was the tournament director at that time. And he was a member at my club, and he got so angry at me because I did not know the rules of golf.
I thought you were going to say he got so angry at the guy who invoked that rule because that just seems like a real jerk thing to do at that moment.
Well, it was, and it still is, but
Yeah.
and the rule still is still alive in the books.
Wonder why.
But and Jack made me really work hard to learn the rules of golf, and he would grill me and grill me and grill me, and I worked very hard at that. And as you know, in order to be certified with the rules of golf, you have to go to the USGA PGA workshops. And I went to a workshop in Orlando, Florida in January of the next year, made a very high score on the exam. And first timers, I'd say the average score is under 70 for first timers on the exam. So
Hmm.
it's pretty tricky, pretty hard exam. And I made a real high score. So I got a call from the guys on the PGA of America Rules Committee, said, made a nice score on the exam. That's great. Congratulations. We want you to serve on our committee. I said, sure, I'd love to. So I went in 1984. I went on the Rules Golf Committee for the PGA of America. The next year, I got an assignment to teach one of those Rules of Golf workshops. So there was a USGA person and a PGA person. And I don't think I've ever worked harder on anything in my life than preparing to teach that workshop. Because if you're going to teach these things, you better be thoroughly knowledgeable and be able to break it down, explain why, know the history, the rules. So I dived in it pretty heavy, and knowing that a lot of people come to the workshops to stump the teacher with questions and things, so I was going to be prepared.
Well, I'm also
But
curious how often somebody kind of takes that turn in life to become a rules official because they had a painful experience like you
yeah,
described for yourself. Is that common?
I don't think it's as common having the painful experience, but I think more or less watching how the rules of golf can serve those that play. It's more common because the rules are there more as help than they are as punitive. And once you see how a great knowledge of knowing the rules can really help players navigate around the golf, and when the ball gets into some bad places or strange places, it's very helpful. And I think that drives a lot of people into the rules in an attempt to be in a position to help.
Yeah, that makes good sense. So you've shown this proclivity for being able to study and learn and apply and then teach these rules. And at some point, somebody comes along and says, you know, we've got a spot for you if you want to do some traveling and if you want to be out there among the very best players in the world. I mean, that's the largest stage you could ask for. Um, what was your first event and what were the butterflies like from the guy who's really hoping to never be called on, but you know at some point you will be?
Well, as I had mentioned that I went on the committee for the PGA of America. So, as a member of that committee, we would work a lot of PGA events, the Club Pro Championship, some um, regional championships. I always worked the PGA Championship. Um, some of us were invited to U.S. Open. I worked as a member of the Masters Committee um, in that capacity, and I became a vice chairman of that committee. And as a vice chairman, you get invited to all of those major events, and you get to know a lot of people. And as you say, my first event, I guess the event where I really had butterflies was PGA Championship at Toledo, Ohio,
At Inverness?
at Inverness.
Okay.
Is that where did they? No, not Zinger. Who hold it out of the bunker to win that tournament?
I thought that might have been Azinger, but I'm
It,
not.
it was it was Zinger that did it. So I think that was 85.
Hmm.
Pretty yeah, 85. And uh, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect there as my first major championship as a rule official. Um, I did not do rover duties. I was assigned to a hole. I sat on the hole. I knew every blade of grass on that hole before the first player got there,
Where all the sprinkler heads are, where any possible impediment could be.
where anything could be, dreamed about things that could happen, disasters, and sat there for the whole week, and it was very quiet.
Hmm.
But uh, the following year, 86, was that 86? Yeah. I had a situation where I was a little more comfortable, and was involved as a rover official with PGA Championship and involved in some timing situations for pace of play and so forth. And I had a ruling with Mr. Nicklaus, and I had another ruling with Arnold Palmer, and I thought that was just the top of the deal there.
Right.
And little did I know, uh, Jack is colorblind, and he had hit his ball close to a penalty area. At the time, it was called a lateral hazard, and he could not see the red line.
Oh, wow.
And he was having to get a clarification on whether or not his ball was in the hazard or in the penalty area. And I looked at it and I said, well, gosh, yeah, it's in there. What's he asking me for? And he says, I'm colorblind. I can't see that line.
Wow.
Am I across the line? I said, yes, you are. So at the time, it made a big difference because you couldn't ground your club, couldn't move loose impediments, et cetera, et cetera. And that was a shock to me that Jack was colorblind, and to do the things that he has done in the game of golf and not to be able to distinguish red from green.
Yeah.
Um,
We can
that,
talk about your trial by fire moment when you're bringing rulings to Arnold and Jack. You're at the top of the mountain, right? And uh,
yeah,
I would assume, I don't know, but I would assume that they were gentlemen in handling everything as you would hope that legends would do that. I'm guessing that over the course of 31 years, it wasn't always quite as congenial in certain key, perhaps intense moments of competition. Have you had the opposite end of the spectrum come your way?
oh, of course. There are a lot of times when uh, players are, well, they're intense and they're playing for a living and they're concentrating on getting the ball in the hole. They're concentrating on their game. They're concentrating on beating the guy next to them and not thinking of rules. And there, I've had some strong disagreements with my decisions, but been able to handle those disagreements through again the work that I did to become knowledgeable enough to teach those rules gives you a great background to explain why the rule is saying what it says.
Mm,
And I could always put it in a context where it wasn't Joe Terry telling the player that he's going to have to do this. It was this rule. And that rule says we got to do this. So it kind of took a lot of that pressure off of me. But
Is
and I have many times uh, given the guys that listen, if you would like a second opinion, I'd be happy to go away and call another official and you can get another opinion. Um, if it was a subjective rule or whether or not this is an abnormal course condition, ground under repair, et cetera, et cetera. I've had players demand a second opinion, and sometimes you just got to tell them, look, my friend, that one is not an opinion. That's a rule. It's black and white.
it's such a unique situation because in most other sports, the officials are always engaged in what's going on. There's a call to be made on almost every play, whether it's a ball or a strike or a block or a charge or pass interference or holding, whatever it happens to be. In golf, for the most part, you're kind of sitting, unless it's a major where, as you said, you're assigned to a hole and you're watching everything. In golf, for the most part, you're waiting to be called in because players are charged with adjudicating themselves, right? They're going to call their own penalties.
Absolutely.
Um, so by the time it gets to the point of needing to call in Joe Terry, probably there's been a conversation amongst playing partners in the group and they aren't sure about some things, or they just want to make sure they don't do something wrong and incur a penalty later on in the round. But when you come rolling in and the rules go against what they thought was going to be the case, I would have to think, especially if it's Friday afternoon and they're scrambling to make a cut, or if it's Sunday, of course, afternoon and the outcome is in the balance of all of this. Can you take us into some of your highlight moments of intensity. You don't have to give names if you don't want to, although it'd be kind of fun just to kind of talk about these moments and here it is. And wow, this thing got a little bit louder than we thought it was going to.
You know, and after 31 years, there are a lot of occasions where you roll into a situation and you see a player that has, and as you said, they've talked it over with the other guys in the group. And you normally are going to get some advice, which in most cases is the old saying, free advice is worth really what you pay for it.
Right.
And would be very easy to proceed incorrectly. And to diffuse that whole thing and to get back down to let's get some facts. Let's see where we're going to go, and let's see what the rules of golf tell us that we must do with this thing. And those situations sometimes they're pretty heated, and sometimes you get a very forceful player. Seve Ballesteros was a very forceful
I
player.
was just going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you about that name. I'm glad you brought it up.
He wanted you to see his side of it uh, very strongly. He was good at it, and I think
There's got to be a moment that just popped into your mind because your smile got the biggest it's been so far. Take us into a Seve moment.
well, I can remember Seve at PGA Championship at in Palm Beach Gardens at the PGA National, and he had hit a ball into a penalty area, big slice, and he was adamant that the ball went into the penalty area at least 150 yards further up than where it had last crossed, and he absolutely was insistent on it and got the gallery involved and got the other players involved, the caddies involved, everybody's insisted on it. And David Price from Bettree Country Club in Dallas was a rules official on the hole. I was a rover. And David was kind of, I guess, he was kind of overwhelmed with what was going on with Seve and his insistence on where the ball went. And I'm not sure that David saw where the ball went, but I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And Seve still, for years and years, never forgot that I gave him a bad ruling on that particular day. But we actually later on found his golf ball, and it was exactly where I had pointed out where it went in. But I love the way that some of the players in questionable situations where you're marginal as to whether you're in ground under repair or if there's enough wetness for it to be temporary water, or does this immovable obstruction interfere with my swing. And I've had players that will, hey, come on in here and tell me where I got to drop this ball so we can get this thing going. We're wasting a lot of time. Let's get in play. And they're telling you that they're going to get relief. You just got to show them where to drop it. Sometimes it works because the official will say, well, your relief is here. And you got to look at it and say, you know what? I just don't believe that piece of metal is your problem. It does not interfere.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest stories of all, this is one of Jack Nicklaus's favorite stories. He loves me to tell it. Every time I see him, he'll get me to tell it to him, but it involved Simon Hobday, South African. Simon was very colorful. I don't know if you've heard any of the Simon stories, but he was just one fantastic character. He might have been the best iron player I've ever seen in my life. He could hit iron shots as pure as anyone, and he never knew anything but hit it at the hole. He was just an amazing iron player. He couldn't drive it, and he was a worse driver than Tiger was. But we got a call one afternoon on a Sunday afternoon that we needed a ruling down on the 16th hole at the Piper Grand Club in North Carolina. And I went to the 16th hole because no one else answered the radio call. So I go down there and I can't find anyone. And I'm driving down the fairway in my golf cart and I hear this, hey, up here. And I look about, gosh, it had to be 125 yards up on the side of the mountain, way up on the hill. And there's a group of people standing around in a semicircle, and there's Simon Hobday standing there with his golf clubs. So I climbed the hill, got up there, breathed it, and he says, there's been some kind of an animal scurrying around in here, and he's created animal damage, and I need relief from animal damage. And I looked at the position of the golf ball, and I looked at the lie of the ball, and I said, Simon, that animal damage isn't your problem. I'm going to deny relief. And he looked at me, and let me see how I can phrase this. He says, if I call you a blank blank, will I get fined? I said, oh, yeah, you get a big fine for that. What if I think you're a blank blank? Will I get fined? I said, Simon, I don't believe we can fine you for what you're thinking. He said, well, I think you're a blank blank. So the other two players and the people around just absolutely fell down laughing. Oh. It was hilarious. But to go further, that was Sunday afternoon. Simon got on the plane. He went to Ireland to play in the Irish Open. And I went home. So I was here in Lakeland, Florida. And 4:30 in the morning, my phone rings. And it's Simon Hobday. He says, I can't believe it. I got off of the airplane in Ireland and the story beat me here. So they had already carried through the locker room and everywhere talking about that. Well, that was just a funny story.
Oh, that's fantastic. I remember playing in an event a few years ago, obviously an amateur event, and I had hit the ball into an area that was not mowed because you weren't supposed to hit it there. And the rules official came over and he told me my options, right? And I took a drop that was not the most advantageous drop I could have taken because I didn't think through those occasions where the rules actually help you. And later on, I saw him afterwards, and I didn't play very well, but afterwards, I was talking to him a bit about that moment, and I said, "What should I have done?" Because I don't think I did what I could have. And he gave me the other options, and I'm like, I could have done that. I said, why didn't you tell me that? And he said, exactly right. He said, because it's not my role to give advice, it's to answer questions. And had you asked me the question, I would have said, yes, you could do that, but it's not him, he's not supposed to be my caddy. He's supposed to be the rules official. How often did you find yourself kind of biting your tongue because there was an obvious remedy to the moment that the player didn't really realize was an option and it would have actually helped him?
Well, I can remember way back, and we were playing in Miami, and Jerry McGee, Mike McGee, who's married to Annika, was his father. And Jerry was one of the nicest guys you'll ever see in your life off the golf course. On the golf course, he was very intense. He was a powder keg and could explode at any moment. And he'd hit a ball into a situation, and I came in, and he says, "Can I drop it here under unplayable?" And I looked at it, and that was one of his options. And I said, "Yes, you can." And it was not a very good drop. And there was another option that would have been much more favorable to him. And he dropped it and was unable to get it out of there, hacked it around a couple of strokes and so forth. But after the round, he was livid and he came to attack me over the same thing that you just said. Yeah. Why didn't you tell me what I said? Well, you asked me. And when you ask me, I've got to give you the answer to the question that you asked. I can't put myself in a position to coach you because I'm not there to coach every player in every situation. Now, had you asked me what are my options now, yep, I have an obligation to tell you every option that is available and the potential outcome of those options.
Hmm.
So it's a difference in how you ask. But when you ask, can I drop it here? And of course, the answer was yes. I had to give you that answer. So I learned to, no matter who it is, I like to go into a rule situation. I'll look at the golf ball. I don't want to know who the player is until last minute. And I've learned to give a player the options, or if he asked a question, can I drop it here? Is this okay? And I said, well, there are some options. Do you know all of the options? And I have always tried to lead or give an opening for the player to say, what are my options? What do you mean? Can you tell me? And I said, would you like to hear your option?
Right, right. It's just
But,
it's a little semantics game, but you have to get there.
but you have to get
Yeah,
there.
so that you're
And
not
again, it's a thin line because I have a real strong obligation to being able to treat every player and every event the same. And you can't be there to coach every player through every situation. Now, if they call for an official, that opens the door for you to help that player with the rules of golf. And we have an obligation to do that. So if you can, without coaching, get them to ask for those options, and we're all better off.
Yeah, I would have to think that over the course of 31 years, you officiated some Ryder Cup matches from time to time.
Yes. No,
That's a different animal altogether, right? The
I'm
congeniality seems to be out the door at the Ryder Cup, and it's now you talk about Seve. My goodness, I mean those stories are legendary with the jingling coins or the proclamations of a drop here, or I mean it's just the stories go on and on and on.
gamesmanship was just
Yes.
absolutely it's just incredible.
How did that
And
play itself out in your presence, whether it's with Seve or some other matches that you were officiating?
well, I can remember probably the most heated, most anticipated match that I ever refereed for match play was at Kiowa Island. The first match out of the box on singles match on Sunday morning was Raymond Floyd and Nick Faldo, both well known for being bears, both just mean as snakes and used every trick in the book. And I said, okay, guys, here's the deal. Who wants to referee that match? Nobody.
Nobody wants a part of
I
that.
said,
Because you're
you know
walking
what?
with them the whole match, right?
I said, I'll take the match because we had two officials that were uh, quite elderly and they were going to referee later on. I said, I'll take the match. And then what I'll do when I finish my match, I'll come back, fold in and help these guys. So we can give them some help later on the round. It was hot. There were a lot of people, as you well know, that was a big deal. Um, but I don't think I've ever worked any harder at paying attention to every movement made by either one of the players or their caddies, because that was paramount that you catch it.
Hmm.
And it was quite a match. And I'll never forget on the 10th hole, we made the turn, and Raymond Floyd had shot 33 on the front nine and was two down.
Wow.
And he wasn't very congenial. He wasn't talking much.
He never
He was
was, though. So.
but I loved him. That man could his short game was so amazing. So we got to the 10th, and that was a pretty hard hole. And Faldo hit a drive down. Raymond hit his, and he had hit it 10, 12 feet, not yards, but feet past Faldo. And his chest puffed up, and he's looking at it. I'm turning it around. And I'm standing over there, and Faldo hits a shot, and he's on the front right of the green. Flag's on the back left of the green. He's got 40 feet. if anything, it's got to be a 40-footer up the hill over a ridge. And that left the door open for Raymond. Raymond hit it about 6 inches from the hole.
Wow.
And I give a look, but standing way off to the side, he walked over to me and he said, "You have to be impartial." I said, "Sometimes it's hard, man."
Yeah.
So we go up, we get to the green, and Raymond's going to pick it up. And I said, "Raymond, you should mark it before you pick it up." Well, now I'm helping him. But so Faldo didn't like that. But he says, "It's got to be good." I said, "It has not been conceded." Well, Faldo wouldn't concede it. And it couldn't be 6 inches. So Raymond marked it, and Faldo made his putt from the front right of that green. He made that 40-footer.
Mm.
And everybody was going crazy. And the crowd got so involved in this thing that they goaded Faldo into giving Raymond that 6-inch putt before he could make it. But we got the match all even going into the 17th hole. And it was quite tense on that tee. You know, that was the par 3 hole. And they split that, but Raymond lost the last hole. But it was quite a match. But it was very intense the entire day.
Well, it seems like over the years, especially in that event, that those stories are endless, and it's not always as much about rules of the game as it is about the rules of match play. So there's, obviously there's some differences there that we don't often get into because we don't play that much match play as amateurs.
That's true.
So it's kind of a mystery and a bit of a surprise to the average fan when they see things happening where, if you're out there in four ball or foursomes, your playing partner can play before you, even though he may be inside of you, if you choose to do that as a teammate, and those kinds of things. But it seems like, Joe, most often, at least from my observation, the controversy comes over, no, he said that putt was good. Well, I never said that putt was good, right? So, and a player picks it up and they've lost the hole because it wasn't expressly given to them, kind of a thing. I'm still surprised when that happens amongst professional golfers in events like that. Did you have any of those? I mean, those could become some pretty
Yeah,
moments.
those are pretty very controversial moments.
Yeah, we had a
And
Solheim Cup moment like that a few years ago that resulted in tears and apologies and all sorts of
oh
things.
yeah, oh yes, we did. And the lady that made the ruling in that particular thing in the Solheim Cup was absolutely spot on in handling that situation. She was amazing at how she handled it. But as you said, it resulted in tears and apologies and the whole thing. They just don't realize the impact of it. But I always tell players, make sure, they said on the first tee, I'm your referee. I'll be with you all the way today. I'll be over here. If you need me, let me know. If I see something, I'm going to rule on it. Please do not pick up a putt until you're absolutely certain it has been conceded,
Hmm.
which has saved me a lot of times. And if we do that on the first tee and then get out of the way and let these guys get along and play, it really helps. And if you're ever going to referee a match play situation, I would highly recommend that you make that statement in front of both players.
Hmm. It
And
was it was a few years ago. This was not a Ryder Cup. This was, what year was this? This was at the 2021 Farmers, so at Torrey Pines. And a player that has long had a reputation for creating his own version of the rules, Patrick Reed, hit a ball into the rough deep. It was not visible to the cameras, but the cameras were on him. Patrick went up and put the ball in his hands, then put the ball back down. Then an official was called in, and the whole thing was really messy. And it certainly didn't help Patrick's reputation any for being, let's say, a little loose with the rules, which has been kind of a cloud hanging over him his entire career. It's pretty rare. that moments like that are so vividly captured on camera because my goodness, there's balls in the air all over a golf course, and that's why this is a game of honor, and you're supposed to be on your honor and do things the right way. And at the very least, you wait for your playing partner to come over as you say to him, "I'm going to do this," even if it's not what you're supposed to do. That's a long-winded way of saying to you, how often do you see players just flat out break the rules and uh, and really kind of get away with it for the most part?
I think in the most recent 10, 15 years, it's been very, very rare. Players are so conscious of correctly proceeding, they go out of their way. Sometimes they operate incorrectly, trying to do the right thing,
Hmm.
but they go out of their way to be obvious in what they're doing. They want to make sure that their fellow competitors see it. They I think all players at the highest level have gone overboard in being above board and playing by the rules.
Yeah.
The situation you're talking about with Patrick Reed. I don't get to watch golf much on TV because, well, I will now that I've retired, but most on Sundays and Saturday and Sundays, I was on the golf course somewhere. But Roy McIlroy had a very similar situation that same day, and not much time had elapsed between Patrick's handling of his deal and Rory handling his deal. But to, as you said, your reputation follows you.
Hmm.
So when Patrick Reed bends over, people look. Roy handled his deal the same way, and not a word was said.
Yeah.
If you can remember that,
Yeah.
but it's it follows you. It does. Yeah.
So as a veteran official, is the cheater label accurately applied to Patrick Reed? Is that a fair label to put on him?
I don't. I hate to put that label on anyone. I think Patrick. I don't know what he had in mind when he moved the sand with his club down
Right.
in the Bahamas.
So,
That
yeah.
that was just that was a terrible display for a professional golfer. But it's now part of Patrick Reed's name
Yeah.
because of that.
Hmm.
Uh, I think Patrick Reed, in handling any situation on the golf course, needs to be extremely careful and extremely above board in anything that he does. He he should never get near his golf ball without somebody else
Yeah.
being around to help to verify it.
You know,
And not that he intends to cheat, but it's just that if something should happen, things can't go his way. That's
there are a lot of high definition cameras in this world and applied to golf broadcast.
wow, it's amazing.
The sand moment that you mentioned is a good reminder of that. And on the other end of that spectrum, I think back to Harbor Town and Brian Davis, left of 18 down in the kind of the wetlands area, and on a not a practice swing, on the actual takeaway of his stroke to hit the ball, he, I think, dislodged one of those cattail reeds that's sticking up down there. Nobody paid it the least bit of attention. He had a really good shot, and then later on turned himself, I guess, in. And I think actually there was enough grace being extended that the prevailing thought was, we're good here, Brian. This was not, but he kind of insisted almost that no, I know what I did, and it cost him the win there.
Yeah,
Uh, that has stuck with me. I mean, that's at least 10 years ago. I was at Harbor Town just a few weeks ago, and I stood over in that area, and thankfully not because my ball was over there, but because I wanted to go over, and I've never set foot on the property until a few weeks ago. I wanted to see this area for myself because that moment left such an impression on me. This is a guy who is not like he had piled up a long resume of wins. This was a game-changing moment, a career-changing moment
it
for
was
him.
a career changer.
And it went
Absolutely.
the other way. And I would have to think that in the world of professional golf, you more often do see errors made on the side of caution, the
Absolutely.
detriment of the player, as opposed to the other way around, like we talked about with Reed.
I agree with you there. I think our players are so committed to the spirit of the game of golf and the responsibility of the player knowing and abiding by the rules of golf.
Yeah.
And you'll see them, as you said, there's more of it going in the direction I'm going to go ahead and accept the penalty, turn myself in. No one else saw it, but yeah, we see an awful lot of that, and that's a real tribute to the quality and the caliber of player that you get when you get to this high level.
Yeah. Uh,
And
in the few minutes that we have left, let me throw a couple of quick names and questions at you, and we'll just kind of do a quick back and forth. From your seat in the cart where you're the official and you're waiting to be called in, you also get a front row seat to watching the best golfers in the world.
oh,
Um,
absolutely.
you've seen people pull off shots that defy all of logic, right? And I'm sure Tiger's been the deliverer of some of those moments. What did you witness from him in person that sticks with you?
You know what? I watched Tiger play um, a lot of golf. I watched a lot of major championships, and his ability to get the club on the ball and get that ball to react to what he wants it to do is just absolutely amazing. And I have no question there's nothing he can't do with a golf club and a golf ball if he wants to.
Hmm.
But I talked with Tom Watson once about when Tom goes to the practice tee to warm up, he hits a 4 iron.
Right.
Everyone else hits wedges and works herself up into a full swing. And I said, why do you do that opposite what everyone else does? He says, well, you're not supposed to hit 4 irons well. So if you go to the tee and the first shots you hit aren't just really sterling and really good shots, it doesn't bother you. you work, he said, you go out there with a wedge and you hit poor wedges, you start thinking, oh man, my swing's gone today. You get some negative thoughts in your system. And he said, you can't get those haints out of there. So you hit a 4 iron, it doesn't bother you if you hit them bad.
It's
And
one
I
way to,
watched Tiger, and Tiger goes to the putting green. He doesn't hit 2 footers first. He hits 30 footers.
hmm,
You're not supposed to make those, but you get a feel for the green. You get your hands on the putter. You get a feel for it, and he rolls it up there. And if it doesn't go in, he never gets a negative thought about it. And that I said the two TWs have really got a good point right there.
hard to argue with the resumes of those two
It
legends.
sure is.
Sure. Um, you've millions and millions of miles you've traveled, hotel after hotel. I mean, it's life on the road. It's not all that it's cracked up to be. It's a pretty long and at times can be very lonely existence. What kept you going for 31 years in that space?
Well, as you said, life on the road is full of surprises, and you have to learn a lot of patience. But you learn to travel, and you learn to expect the unexpected. And the greatest thing about for 31 years, all of that travel was the trips home.
Hmm,
That'll keep you going,
interesting.
and you always look forward to every event because you've made great friendships, great relationships, friendships. So you go from this city to this city, and you arrive there. You see a lot of familiar faces. You're treated like part of the family. It's exciting to be able to get there. Much unlike the people that are in the city and the volunteers and the people at the golf course and the clubs that are working there, we come riding in high. Everything's already built out. All the work's been done. We're there to finalize the marking of the golf course and the setup of the golf course and start the event. The event concludes on Sunday, and we're out of there. We don't have to deal with the breakdown, the letdown of everything being done, and we're gone. And I don't have to watch all of that other. So that's a real benefit to just enjoying the upswing of tournament golf all the way around. But all in all, those trips home are the most memorable and the most fun.
I love that. You mentioned back near the beginning of our conversation, a timing ruling that you were giving at some point, and it reminded me that we don't see those anymore. I just watched Patrick Cantley take what seems like the better part of a week to line up a putt. Then he missed the putt and he did it again. So we're 2 weeks into this thing as he's trying to putt out from 3 feet.
Yeah.
What's the directive from the tour, or what's the reluctance to walk in and say, "Sorry, dude, that's two"?
Well, the PGA Tour has changed their philosophy on the management of pace of play. The PGA Tour Champions, I think, probably does the best job of any organized event in the world of managing pace of play. And of course, we only have 78 players every week, a very manageable field. We know who to look for, who's going to be slow. We know how to handle it, and our regulations help us. PGA Tour has a big problem, and they've taken some great steps to work towards correcting those problems, and they've reduced the size of their fields. But when you got 144 players in a field, and you got two tee starts, and you have two waves, well, if you're the first group out in the morning, if you play in less than 2.5 hours, you're just going to be sitting on your bag when you make the turn.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do to prevent that. So the players pace themselves for that 2.5 hour pace, or 2:15 or whatever it is, but so that they know that the last 9 holes are going to be at that same pace. So they just pace themselves. Then after you make the cut, you go to the player and you say, "Look, we got a little timing issue here. You guys need to catch up." And say, "Look, we played our first 2 rounds at the exact same pace. You put us there, and now we've gotten ourselves in a mode to play at that pace today on Saturday. So don't rush us." And I think they have a good point there. But now that the PGA Tour has reduced the size of the fields, you're not going to have those waits at the turn, and you can get your guys through in a reasonable time, and you establish a good pace. If you're not able to keep up with it, then there are layers of punitive actions. Some are warnings, some are fines, some are restrictions on where you'll be paired. You won't get TV pairings if you have exceptional number of bad times or slow plays. They're taking some great steps to handle it.
But do you ever see a day where there will be an enforcement of a stroke penalty during play? I mean, we watch Keegan Bradley. I mean, I like Keegan, but my goodness, what are we doing here around the greens? The 8 point, the pacing, the whole thing, and you're 2 minutes into a putt when I thought they said 45 seconds at some point.
Well, yeah, and I think though we always have to remember, if you're in position with the group ahead of you, you can take all the time you want as long as you maintain that position.
Okay.
But if you are out of position and overtime, then is when we take our official action and go into a timing mode. And if you get bad times, and we do, I'm not sure if the PGA Tour last year issued any stroke penalties or not, but there are a lot of fines that are involved. But for a player to get a penalty stroke, you have to go, first of all, you get a bad time. You go to the player and say, "Now that was a bad time. There is going to be a fine coming your way. And if you get another one, it will be a stroke penalty." So you've really explained it to them, put it straight out. It's not going to be a surprise if you do get a stroke penalty. I think the thing that peer pressure has helped slow play more than anything else. But when you get a Keegan Bradley, a Cantlay, and a Jordan Spieth
Yeah.
all playing together,
Whew.
and you can almost rest assured that that group is going to have some warnings or possibly be timed.
Yeah. Or have your mail forwarded to that group because you're going to be there for a while. So. Oh man. Well, Joe, I sure appreciate the chance to talk with you and kudos, congratulations on a remarkable run. Very few people do anything for 31 years, let alone be front and center into the game that we all love so much. And every conversation I've had is, man, Joe Terry's a legend, and you're going to be missed out there. I'm sure you'll go through a little withdrawals until you find that nice Sunday afternoon just with your feet up in front of the TV watching a major instead of being at the center of attention during a big ruling. But I'm so glad we had the chance to meet a few weeks ago at the event there at Champions Gate, and thank you for letting me bother you at home and talk about your great career.
Well, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed meeting you, working with you, watching you work, and you can call me at any time that you need.
Well, when I have a ruling question with my buddies out on the course, you may just get a call, and just know in advance, I'm going to expect you to find in my favor, just no matter what.
Okay.